In this lesson, we'll learn about interfaces. Interfaces are essentially contracts stating that you will implement all the methods with the exact return types and parameters that are declared within that interface. An interface uses the keyword interface and declares the method's signature only. This becomes very useful when creating a standard that all classes must follow when implementing the interface. So to explain what I mean, let's create an interface. We'll create a logger interface. And we'll say the purpose of this interface is to ensure that all classes that implement this interface class need to have a commit logger method, and we'll add a debug logger method as well. So instead of having a constructor, we'll remove that. We also need to add the interface keyword. And then we said that we wanted a commit logger. Now when we're creating or putting these methods into the interface, we cannot use public or private or set any of the access modifiers for the methods. So as an example, if we tried to do public logger commit logger, and then this is just the signature, so we don't want to have any of the body in there as well. Let's just say we save and deploy. Oh shoot. Interfaces do not have the class keyword either. And then as we can see, error was around the public. So we're going to remove that, because we can only have the return method and the name of the method itself. Then we also said that we wanted a debug logger. This one will just have a void. The whole purpose of the debug logger is just to debug a log. So debug logger. And then this one will say that the method has to return, or the parameter within the method has to be a logger. Okay, and now we can deploy. So any class can implement this interface by using the implements keyword. And what does that mean? That means that any class that has an implementation must implement these methods. So first what we'll do is we'll do this with a couple of them just to show. And the first one that we'll do is we'll do the updated logger. And with the updated logger, that extends the simple logger. And so we'll say implements logger interface. So now there's a couple of errors that we are going to have if we try to save and deploy. The first one being that when we override this commit logger, it's a void return. So that's the first error. The other one is that it doesn't have the debug logger method. And it can have any other methods as well, such as this new method and the constructor. It can have anything else in there. All that the logger interface is stating is that it has to have those two methods and with the same parameters and returns. If I try deploying, it says must implement method, the commit logger with the logger _ c, and then a void debug logger. So we can add the debug logger first. We'll do public logger, or no, it's void. Debug logger. And then it takes a logger, we'll call it log, and then system.debug, we'll debug the log. And that's it for that one. And then what we can do is we change the void to logger, and then instead of system.debugging the log, we will return it. So let's try deploying and see what happens. And as we can see, there's an error with a clash with the logger return versus the void that it was. The reason being is because we are extending the simple logger. So in this case, we will change the simple logger from a void. We'll do the same thing for a logger and then return the log. And then we need to save and deploy. And then we can go back and deploy the updated logger. Okay. Now let's add the interface to the abstract logger. And this one, instead of doing the extended abstract, let's do the simple abstract. So the keyword is implements, and then it's logger interface. And now this one, I already have the logger commit logger, but I do want to show, and one of the reasons for this is when we're implementing to an abstract, it doesn't have to have all of those contracts or all the methods in there. And I'll show you what I mean by that. So we don't have the debug logger in there, that method for debugging the logger. That's not in this abstract. But I can still deploy this. However, we have the simple logger abstract extended. So this is inheriting everything from this simple logger abstract class. This has to follow that same implementation for the interface. It's inheriting everything. So it's going to, even though it doesn't say implement the logger, it still has to. So let's try and see what happens if we were to take, we'll take the simple logger and try to run it and commit the logger. So we'll just say le is equal to new, and then testing message for the string. Next we'll take that variable and we will commit logger. And when we try to run it, it says, I'll remove this, class must implement the method void interface debug logger. So even though we were able to deploy for this abstract, it breaks everything that is inheriting this abstract class. So now what we need to do is, I'm just going to go not to the simple logger, the updated logger, and grab the debug logger. And again, the return types have to be the same. If I were to take and try to return logger instead of having this debug, and deploy, I get that it must implement the method void. So we're going to go back to void and deploy. And now that's good. So the other thing, and this is where the power of interfaces comes into play is that now that the interface has the contract that says it needs to have the commit and it needs to have the debug, what we can do is for any class that is implementing the logger interface, we can use the logger interface as a data type. And that means that then we can put that into the logger interface data type, and we can still commit the logger, and we can also debug. So we're gonna create a logger variable for log. And then debug logger log. And this will run. And that's because the logger interface, we know that all of them have to have the commit logger, all of them have to have the debug logger. So any of them that implement the interface, now we have a commonality between it. And that's the only commonality that we have to have, but we know that we have those methods that are going to be there that we can run. And we're going to go a little bit more into it as well when we talk about casting.